I accept the Koaster Challenge.
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 Do you accept the Koaster Challenge?
What is the Koaster Challenge? A group of regular people that went from fearful to fearless, all from riding roller coasters. So please secure your hats and glasses. It's time to take the Koaster Challenge with your hosts, David Cantu and JD Prescott.
Hey, how's it going, JD?
It's going great.
Happy April.
Springtime.
How's your week going so far?
Long.
I heard you started a new job.
Yes, I did.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I am really glad. You're the fourth person I've known so far this month that has gotten an even better job since the whole COVID situation happened.
It is. It's fun. I'm back in doing movie industry, actually. I went back to the movie industry, which is not too bad.
Yeah, I mean, you were really impacted hard by the COVID-19 pandemic, and I'm really glad to hear people are starting to get back to work, and people are starting to venture out more. We're starting to reopen. Theme parks Magic Mountain has reopened, and we got Disney opening up.
At the end of the month,
end of April. Knott's is looking at in May, and we haven't heard much on Universal and SeaWorld yet, but I'm pretty sure by May we should have everything open. Hopefully the counties, LA County is still in the red tier, but Orange County is getting down into the orange tier, which should put Disneyland at 25% capacity, which will be good news. There's progress being made in this. So
yeah. Well, the news said, hopefully sometime in April we should be in the orange tier ourselves.
Yeah. So right now we've got a really exciting episode. Very exciting. I hope you guys are, got your coffee with you or your caffeinated drink, because we got a pretty long interview. Andrew has got a VIP with him today, and we're interviewing Jeff Joyner.
You mean Coaster Kids? Or
yeah,
Coaster Dad?
Exactly. Jeff is also known on Instagram as Coaster Dad, well known in the community as Coaster Dad. But him and his son Logan, they run Coaster Kids and Thrills United, and I'm really excited to have Jeff on the show, and because Coaster Challenge and Coaster Kids have a lot in common when it comes to helping people be able to break their fears and helping them live better lives just by getting on a roller coaster.
Well, I'm glad that he's on.
Yeah. But we're going to get into that. But first, let's see what's happening in the news. California Theme Parks has a new restriction on when it comes to reopening. That the new policy in California is that people are not allowed to scream on a roller coaster. Okay, let's pause that for a moment there, JD. I got to pause the music. That is have you ever heard of anything like that before?
No.
In all the years that I have been riding roller coasters, I have never heard of a policy that said you're not allowed to scream on a roller coaster. How do you control yourself from screaming on a roller coaster, especially if you're on a very intense one like X2?
Yeah, but I mean, some people it's an involuntary thing that they can't control. And so how are they going to control it?
It's like, how do you get a kid to not scream? Now, let's look at the thing here about screaming. There are different types of screams. Okay, there's the fun scream where you're like, "Woo, yeah, baby!" And then all of a sudden there's the panic scream where you're like, "Woo!" There are two different types of screams, and it's like, I know that when I started riding roller coasters, I was in a panic scream at first because I didn't know what I'm experiencing, and then when you have, then they turn into fun screams. But that's good luck to whoever the advisor here in California gave that to our leadership. Good luck enforcing that policy, because you are not going to be able to stop a kid from screaming.
Or someone that screams involuntarily because they're either scared or...
Yes. So I really like to see how the parks enforce no screaming policy. I think that's just, I'm sorry folks, it's just ridiculous.
It is.
So that's pretty much what's been in the news, and it's been the biggest chatter this week.
I'm at a loss for words.
I mean, it's like, wow, I'm pretty sure.
It's almost comical.
Yeah.
What are they going to have, the scream police?
You have the right to remain silent.
No pun intended.
Yeah. So, well, that's good. Probably the weirdest news of the week.
That is the oddest news of the week.
Yeah. All right, so we have a great episode today and a great interview. We got Andrew standing by. He's got Jeff Joyner from Koaster Kids and Thrills United. I'm going to be joining Andrew in that interview as well, JD. So really excited about this. So take it away, Andrew.
Thank you, David and JD. So this is Andrew, one of the correspondents with Koaster Challenge. Hello, everyone. Today, I have a very special guest that we're going to be talking to for a little while here, and that is Jeff Joyner. I think a lot of people know Jeff. Jeff, welcome to the podcast.
Glad to be here.
Honored to have you, sir.
Excellent. Glad to have you. So Jeff, we're going to be talking to you about a few different things. We're going to ask some questions that we like to ask all of our guests. We're also going to get into some more specific questions given your experience and what you specialize in and how it actually very much intersects with the mission of Koaster Challenge. And we'll get to those later. But to start off with, actually, why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself, tell everyone who you are for those few that probably don't know you already.
Well, probably a lot of people don't know me, but my name is Jeff Joyner. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I've been someone who loves riding coasters and rides my whole life. Grew up in Detroit, Michigan, so Cedar Point was my home park. And we'd go to Kings Island for a couple days every summer, all through growing up. And so I think my first coaster I can remember riding was Racer at Kings Island. And but I wouldn't call myself a coaster enthusiast. But I kind of got dragged into the coaster enthusiast community by my son. My son, Logan, started a YouTube channel called Koaster Kids. And a lot of you guys may have heard of him, Koaster Kids with a K and a K. And, long story short, Logan is on the autism spectrum and really struggled as a young child. When he was 4 years old, he couldn't talk. He used to punch himself and slap himself all day. And it was an uphill battle, but he got obsessed with watching roller coaster videos on YouTube, and he would sit for hours and watch POV videos. And he did that for years, and he started talking and he started memorizing stats. And he did that when he was 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. And by the time he was 8 years old, he could tell you most every coaster in the world, how many feet of track, what year it opened, the name of the manufacturer, the angle of the steepest hill, the maximum speed. But he wouldn't ride. He was afraid to ride. And one day in June of 2014, when he was 8 years old, he said, "Dad, I'm ready to be brave." And I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "I want to ride a roller coaster." So we went over. We live about 20 minutes from Kings Island. I said, "Do you know what you want to ride?" He said, "Yep, Snoopy's Flying Ace Aerial Chase." It was made by Intamin. It opened in 1991. It's 2003, however many feet of track. And that was his first coaster, and he got off and he loved it. That summer, he rode all the coasters at Kings Island and really had a breakthrough. We went back to school in the fall, and his teachers, his special ed teachers were like, "What the hell happened to Logan?" We're like, "What?" They said, "He's not afraid of loud noises anymore. He's more confident. He's, communicating better." And they said, "Well, he rode all the coasters at Kings Island this summer," and they didn't even believe me. But they were pretty blown away by his progress. So they wrote it into his IEP, his development plan, that we could skip school, pull him out of school to go to theme parks for therapy. And so that's where this all started. We went out to Knott's Berry Farm. I do professional speaking and training for a living. I own a company called Jeff Joyner Training. And so I speak to audiences all around North America on topics like success and attitude and teamwork and leadership and, customer service. And so I started bringing Logan with me when I was traveling to these events, and he started riding coasters. He decided to start a YouTube channel called Koaster Kids. And the story kind of goes on and on and on, but that's my background and how I got. So, I've probably ridden more roller coasters than any non-enthusiast. I honestly, there's lots of things I like doing better than riding roller coasters. I tell people I'm more of a parenting enthusiast. I love doing things with my kids, and whatever they're into, that's what I get into. And so we've been all around the world riding coasters together and learned a lot of lessons. It was doing that I ran into, David, and got talking about, Coaster Challenge and what you guys do, and really kind of close to my heart, helping people face their fears. That's something that's important to me.
That's great. That's outstanding. So you actually, in the process of your introduction there, you already answered my first question, which was going to be what your first coaster was, which was Racer at Kings Island there. But I wanted to touch upon a couple of things you mentioned there, especially you mentioned that Logan, who I know could be with us today, but you said he's on the autism spectrum. So you mentioned how he was, very obsessed with coaster videos and coaster facts and knew every coaster out there. So I have a number of friends that are on the spectrum. One of my closest coaster buddies here in Florida is on that spectrum. And I've seen this again and again where when someone that's autistic or Asperger's or anywhere on that spectrum, they oftentimes have a singular obsession, and it can be different things. It can be movies. It can be a certain type of food. It can be, as the joke goes with Rain Man, got to watch Wapner now, that kind of thing, TV. Right. So was it for Logan, is that his obsession was coasters that kind of became his singular obsession?
Yeah, when he was younger, he went through different phases. He was really into Blue's Clues TV show for a while, and everything was Blue's Clues. And then he got into Wipeout, the show Wipeout, and would watch that. And but coasters were like his first main obsession. And I agree with you. We've met thousands of people around the world in the last 6 years we've been doing this, and it surprised me how many kids and adults we met who are on the autism spectrum. In fact, Logan's teachers were just kind of blown away. They were like, the reason they didn't believe me that Logan rode coasters is they said, look at his file. It says that he's afraid of loud noises, strangers, crowds, fast moving things, and heights. And I go, I don't know what to tell you, but he picked the one activity that is all of those things. And so they were really kind of blown away. And I said, I'm not an autism expert. I'm not a psychologist. I said, but here's what I think drew Logan to roller coasters is that they are predictable. What really frightened Logan and lots of kids and adults like him is unpredictable situations, right? It's not the loudness of the noise, it's the surprise of the alarm that they don't like.
Right.
It's not strangers that they're afraid of as much as that a stranger might get in their face. And, and so what coasters represented for Logan, especially combined with YouTube and POVs, is he would watch the videos and memorize how the coasters went. And in fact, he spent a whole year before he was brave enough to ride coasters where he'd go to Kings Island, sit in the test seat for Diamondback or the test seat for Banshee, and he would close his eyes and watch the video in his mind of the ride. And in his mind, he was riding Banshee. He was riding Diamondback. And so when the time came that he rode, he was not fearful at all because coasters are like the most predictable thing, right? They always go the same way every time, very predictable speed. And so his teachers are like, wow, maybe we're kind of onto something about, the predictability factor. And, kind of a cool thing, but it was, yeah, his obsession for a long time. He's really kind of grown out of that now. But there was a time when part of the reason kids wanted to come meet him was his encyclopedic knowledge of roller coasters, that we'd be in line for a coaster. And in fact, Logan's coming right here. Hey, Logan, say hi to these guys.
This is the crazy kid he's talking about.
Hi there.
Hey, Logan. We're recording a podcast, and so I don't think they'll be able to see you here. We're doing a Zoom right now, but I think it'll just be audio later. But this is David
correct.
and Andrew from Coaster Challenge that help people.
Hi, Logan.
Oh, cool.
Maybe we'll get Logan to be a guest on one of your future podcasts.
We would love to have you, Logan. Love to hear your story as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So
and then So that's outstanding. So I think it's very, very fortunate, perhaps, I guess, for Logan that what became his obsession as he became older, preteen and so forth, was something that he, continued and fully embraced and really helped him therapeutically with his, dealing with all these fears and issues, and helped him greatly. So he's been better off as a person from it, huh?
Oh, absolutely. And, and we've had a little bit of some hard conversations with some other parents that saw Logan's improvement, and it gave them hope, which is a good thing. But my kid's not getting better leaps and bounds the way that your kid did. And I just had to tell him that, hey, every situation is different. Every kid is different. But Logan, literally, I remember, I don't know if you've ever been to Kings Island, but there's a walkway that goes underneath Diamondback's first hill. And when Logan was little, he used to cover his ears and run under that as fast as he could so that he wouldn't have to hear that, that, B&M sound as it went by. And fast forward a couple of years, and we were standing under there, and he said, "Is that more quiet than it used to be?" And I said, "No, it's exactly the same amount of noise it's always been." But he just kind of overcame that. And, it's, and, the part that's been really cool, the YouTube factor helped him a lot too, that he really wanted to start this channel to spread his passion for coasters. And he came up with, this is all when he was in 4th grade, right? He came up with calling it Coaster Kids with a K and a K. And he wanted to rate coasters on the LSS. And I said, "What's the LSS?" "Well, that's the Logan Scream Scale of 0 to 5 screams." And a coaster with not very extreme is 1 scream. And so, but he really, making the videos was a struggle for him when he was young. We'd probably delete 5 or 6 takes for every one that we kept, because he would get tongue-tied. But his passion for coasters was forcing him not just to ride coasters, but to learn how to communicate. Right, David? I'm sure the same thing is true with some of your challenges you faced in your life, that making, YouTube videos, and it's kind of forces you to work on your articulation and expressing your ideas. And so the first year he grew because of coasters. The next year he was really growing because of making YouTube videos. The third year was when strangers started showing up in droves that wanted to meet him. We'd go to Cedar Point, and 75 kids would show up wearing their Coaster Kids shirts that all wanted to ride coasters with Logan, and they would crowd around him, Logan. And it stressed him out, and he had to learn, how to shake people's hands and look them in the eye. And we had a lot of good father-son conversations about, how to learning to communicate with people. And Logan, why don't you, the weird phenomenon about YouTube is that these kids all knew him pretty well. They knew his favorite coasters, they knew his background, his favorite food, and they wanted Logan to know them in the same way. And so he just kind of learned to ask them questions. "Hey, what's your favorite coaster?" And they'd all start talking, and they spoke that same language of the coaster world, right? It used to crack me up. You see these total stranger kids come walking up, and there's a little bit of, shyness and nervousness. And then they start talking about, "What's your favorite B&M invert?" "Oh, it's Montu." "Oh no, mine's Black Mamba." "Oh no, mine's," and all of a sudden they're all speaking a common language that supersedes, geography, supersedes age gaps. Even kids that are a couple years older or younger, it didn't even matter, because they also had that common passion. It was a pretty cool thing.
That's really cool. I can relate, by the way, to one thing you mentioned about the challenges of video recording and YouTube and so forth. I've been helping out with Coaster Challenge here now for almost 3 years. David and I met in May of 2018, and here we are in March of 2021. And I started helping him within a few months after that. And initially it was just kind of planning things and occasionally going to media days. And then I started getting more and more into video. I bought my first gimbal for my iPhone and microphone. And then actually it was not even a year after Dave and I met in March of 2019, I did my next international trip, but first time as someone representing a channel where I'd have to be, oh gosh, I got to record my POVs. I've got to get my outside perspective B-roll shots and things like that. And I went to China for 2 weeks for work, and I spent some time there, vacation and weekends, going to about 4 or 5 different parks and recording a lot of coasters and, and David and I did a lot of work beforehand to kind of coach me on how to do it. But the thing with doing recordings like that is you got to get it right. You can do some editing and you can kind of mix takes a little bit, but you kind of got to get it all right versus something that I have a lot more familiarity given not just my work on this podcast, but more so some other work that I do related to being a coaster enthusiast. With my work with Ace, I have done a lot of audio editing over the years. And the great thing about audio editing is you can really have a lot more flexibility. It's much more tedious in a way because you're not visually looking at anything other than a waveform, but you can edit things and edit out people repeating words and clearing their throats and foul ups and things like that without having to do a whole take all over again. So I can totally relate how much our more difficult video is. Yeah. So kind of moving on with our questions here. You told me your first coaster was Racer. Great. And by the way, I have been to Kings Island a few times. I've been on Racer, but Beast actually is one of my favorite wooden coasters. So in any case, what would you say is your craziest moment you ever had on a coaster?
Craziest moment on a coaster. That's a good question. I've had a few. I'll give you a couple, and you can decide which one's crazier. We were on Diamondback one time, and a guy had his cell phone hooked to a clip on his belt. Not the best plan. And as we were riding on Diamondback, we see all of a sudden this guy, as we're going down one of the hills right before the splashdown part. I don't even know what they call those, airtime hills. But we see his phone fly off his belt into the air. And as we are dropping down and slowing down, his phone stayed like right with him. And his girlfriend reached up and like grabbed his phone right out of the air. And we were like, did you see that? That was unbelievable. And so we were decelerating and dropping at the exact rate of a falling object, 32 feet per second squared. It was fascinating. But probably my funniest crazy moment I ever had was out at Mount Olympus in Wisconsin Dells. That we went out there for the first time when we rode Hades 360, which is that's a wild ride. If you like wooden coasters, it's pretty unique. Is that Gravity Group, I think, and goes through that amazingly long tunnel. But after we got off the coaster, we shot our little wrap up video, and I look at my phone and I have like 7 missed calls from a phone number in Baraboo, Wisconsin. And I'm like, who in the world is trying to call me from, and the people that from the park knew we were there and we were going to be filming there. So maybe they're trying to get a hold of me. I call the number back and it's like, whatever county sheriff's office. And I'm like, oh, this is the sheriff's office? And they said, yeah. And I said, I missed like 7 calls from the sheriff's office. And they said, well, you called 911. That ride was so aggressive that my phone in my pocket shook so ferociously that my phone assumed it was an emergency and called 911. And so this poor 911 operator is like, 911, what's your emergency? And all she hears is, people screaming. And so they thought there was a mass murder and they were trying to call my phone back. And I said, I was just riding a roller coaster. And I said, well, that's probably never happened before. And they said, no, it happens all the time. So that's probably my most unusual coaster experience, I would say.
That's the first time I've ever heard that situation. I mean, I know you can butt dial all the time when people, and then you answer and all you hear sounds like sandpaper grinding on something. But back to what you were saying, I had a similar situation happen to me, like with not the cell phone part, but one time I was on Full Throttle over at Magic Mountain, and we were going through that gigantic loop. And one thing about Full Throttle, when you go upside down on that loop, you're upside down for quite a while. Well, I'm in my seat, and all of a sudden I see this shiny silver thing floating down, and it was a quarter, and it was just floating. But then the quarter was coming closer to me, but it literally hit me in the shoulder, but it felt like a bullet. I mean, it hit my shoulder really hard. It left a mark on my shoulder, and I was like, wow, if a quarter can do that, thank God that cell phone did not hit anybody on the ride.
Yeah, we've seen some scary stuff. My son and his friends were riding Maverick at Cedar Point, and somebody had like a GoPro that came loose and came flying, and it hit the seat right above the head of this teenage girl, and like, bam. I mean, like really hard on a fast movie, and had that hit her in the face, it would have sent her to the hospital. And so we're big advocates for secure your electronics and everything. You know, I'm the typical dad at the park with my cargo shorts with my zipper pockets. Everything goes in the zipper pocket because we've seen a few crazy things like that.
Yeah.
Interesting. I have a similar story myself, and I'm sorry, whenever, and you know, we can joke about it perhaps, but at the end of the day, it can be quite a serious situation, as Jeff, as you alluded to, and makes me think of the Fabio situation with the goose on Apollo's Chariot in Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. And none of us ever want to have that happen, or any, you know, whether it be a goose, or the poor goose as well, by the way, or a cell phone or whatever it may be. But I was at Magic Mountain about 4 years ago with my husband, and he is not an enthusiast like me. I call him GP plus. So I call him GP plus because he loves coasters. He knows some things about them only because he listens to me sometimes when I go on and on about them, you know, kind of like Logan does. But you know, so he's GP plus by his association with me. So I have my cargo shorts with the zippers, just like you, Jeff. I love them. I wear them to parks every time. I wear them pretty much all the time anyway, because they're convenient to have those extra pockets. He does not have things like that. And we went on, well, what's now an infamous coaster that's no longer at Magic Mountain, which is Green Lantern's First Flight, which is the famous, Intamin, what I forget what the model is, but it's basically it's very similar to the Arrow 40 coaster.
Free spin, or what? No, it's not a free. What do they call that?
Yeah, it's an Intamin Zack Spin.
We rode one
I've
like
been on
that
it before.
we rode one like that in Sweden too. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been on it before, and I'm one of the, I guess, strange people that actually thought it was a decent ride. You know, even David hates it. You know, he's an enthusiast. So many other enthusiasts I know hate it.
I screamed bloody murdered at the end.
Arrow.
I screamed bloody murdered at the end of that ride. That really fast turn, and I felt like I was going to be ejected out of the seat. I said, when they tore it down, I was like, good riddance. Get rid of that thing. Take it to LeBron. I don't, at this point, let LeBron deal with it.
Oh, is that where that went?
Yeah. I believe so. Yeah. Well, like I said, I've been on that one. I've been on many of the SNS, not the Arrow, many of the SNS 40 free spins. And to me, they ride pretty similar, and again, both good, but they are kind of freaky, like Dave was saying, because of the way they have these very, dramatic transitions as you reach each edge of the track, and you're flipping over and you're going over those curves and so forth. Very unique physics to it. Any case, so I took my husband on it, and he was freaking out the whole time. We get off the ride. His leg is hurting because I guess something hit his leg, and his phone was gone. And I'm convinced his phone is what hit his leg. He's convinced otherwise. But anyway, his phone was gone, and we could not find it. We go to Six Flags Guest Relations, and they tell us to put in a request for a lost and found. And we check back at the end, later on that day. They never found it. I figure his phone's a goner. I got him a new phone. Well, months later, I get an email from Six Flags for me to send them $15 or something because they found his phone, and so they could send it to me. I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to see this phone because, falling 100 feet or whatever, it must be destroyed and, beyond even, recognition. So I send the $15. I get the phone. The phone is in perfect working order. It looks perfect. It is working fine. It's a testament. This is again 4 years ago. It must have been like an iPhone 10, I believe, back then. Wow. And I wound up, being able to sell it to Gazelle for a couple $100, and I figure it was a goner. So pretty good testament to how good phones are. But again, that does not mean you should not secure your loose articles on a coaster. So, so my next question is, Jeff. My understanding is that you certainly do a lot of help in your day job, as they call it, helping people overcoming fears, and with your motivational talks and so forth. But why would you say, in your personal opinion, why is it that overcoming fear is so important?
Well, yeah, and I tell you, I meet I work in one of the lines of work that was really kind of waylaid by COVID, because I speak to conferences of 400, 500, 1,000, 2,000 people, and those all kind of went away in the last year. Hopefully they come back. But I meet tens of thousands of people every year. And I've worked with companies and organizations and events in 47 different U.S. states. So I meet a lot of people, and I talk to them about their dreams and goals and what's holding them back. And I just see over and over again that it is fear. That is the one thing that's holding people back. It's usually not fear of roller coasters, right? I mean, if you're afraid of roller coasters, well, you're not going to have a great day at Six Flags, probably. Right. But, how's that going to affect your life? I don't know. That's probably marginal. But fear of other people's opinion, fear of failure, fear of looking stupid, fear of, what are people going to think, fear of success, fear of speaking in front of people, whatever it is. I taught public speaking for 5 years at Miami University in Ohio, and these students would come into this class just petrified, like passing out fear, like give me an F instead of standing up and saying one word in front of this class. And so I really have a heart for trying to help people overcome that, right? Because it's all false, right? Maybe you've heard this acronym before, but fear, FEAR, is false evidence appearing real. It is all in your head. Your fears are in your head. I tell people all the time, danger is real, but fear isn't. Fear is in your head. It's something you made up. And I just see people, and even, I have 3, teenage kids, and seeing, young people and the struggles they have, asking somebody on a date, sharing with somebody their true feelings. It's all based in fear. And honestly, I feel like it's getting worse, not better in our society. And I could go on and on and on. One of the culprits, I think, in the fear mongering business is the media. No matter what your political views are, most people can step back. And I've studied, when I was in graduate school, persuasive rhetoric and the use of mass media. But basically, the business model of the news is the same no matter where you tune in. They learned a long time ago that there's one demographic that watches news more than any other, and that's people who are frightened. And so the business model is let's make people afraid, right? And CNN wants you to be afraid of Donald Trump, and Fox News wants you to be afraid of Nancy Pelosi. And what they all agree with is just as long as you're afraid, they'll win. Even when there's a storm coming into town, you want to see fear mongering, watch the weatherman like, oh no, the snowpocalypse is coming. And people, stay tuned for up to the minute. And that's how they make their money. And people that don't know better are just letting in the real, maybe I'm over answering your question, but why do I have a passion for that? Because people who are afraid don't make good decisions. They don't make good choices.
Right.
They hide.
And they also, their lives are limited.
Oh, so limited.
Their lives are limited.
They make impulse decisions that are not the right decisions.
Yeah, they make decisions to be safe, and they seek comfort. And you know what? Nothing great ever happens in your comfort zone. You got to force yourself out of that. And so that's a lot of my training is kind of trying to inspire people to, take a bold step in the direction of their dreams and goals. Do something you're afraid of, and I don't care even what it is. That's what Logan's done with his, you may have heard of Logan started probably 4 years ago, something called the Be Brave Challenge. And it was around the time when the ice bucket challenge was the big viral thing that people were dumping ice on their head. And Logan said, I want to start something like that. So he started the Be Brave Challenge and made a little video. And here he was, 11 years old at the time, maybe 10 even, making a video saying, I challenge everyone in the whole world to do something you're afraid of, record yourself on video doing it, and send it to me, and I'll feature it on YouTube. And it's one of my favorite videos he ever made. He said, let me give you some examples of courage. You can ride a coaster you've always been afraid of, or you can hold a snake if you're afraid of snakes, or you can ride a skateboard. He said, or you could just apologize to somebody. And I said, oh, little man, you don't know how many grownups I know would rather hold a snake than apologize to somebody.
So true. So
it's really true. It's grown into this thing where kids and adults from around the world have sent Logan videos of them accepting the Be Brave Challenge and, doing something they're afraid of. And it's, to me, if you're going to do something, if we're going to put all this time and money into riding roller coasters, we got to find a way to do it so it helps other people. And I'm really proud of that Logan was able to do that.
I've seen several.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I've seen several of the Be Brave Challenge videos, and I think the one that I'm curious to see if Logan's ever going to do it with his new channel, Thrills United. But I know Taylor Bybee very well. you guys do. I've had the opportunity to meet him at Kings Island during Orion. Great guy. But he did a great Be Brave Challenge video for Logan that I was very impressed on, and that was him doing the sky jump over at the Stratosphere in Las Vegas, which I'm thinking of doing next month for my 40th birthday to kick off another decade of life. And
Nice.
I'm still trying to build myself up to do that. That's a 113 story jump. So I'm, have you and Logan ever thought about doing something like that when you guys ever go to Vegas?
Oh yeah, I would love to do it. Logan hasn't been to Vegas yet. I rode. I was at Stratosphere back when they had the Big Shot and they had Insanity. I rode Insanity, which is a perfect example of like fear being in your head. Right, they're hanging you out 100 and whatever stories off the ground. But it's basically a flat ride. And people tell me I would never do that. And I go, you know what? If you did that same ride at the fair and went flying off of there, you'd be dead. Just like if you fell off the Insanity in Las Vegas, you'd be dead. That one of those things is not any more scary than the other one. And so, but it's all in your head. And even the jump that you're thinking about doing, I tell people all the time, like if anyone ever died doing that, that what is it, like a controlled drop down from if a single person died doing
from the top,
they would close the ride, right? So its very existence argues for its safety. And again, if you get fear out of your mind, you can start thinking logically. Logan spoke to a group in Michigan one time, and he said, you're way more likely to die driving to the theme park. I mean, you're thousands of times more likely to die driving to the theme park than you are any ride. He said, you're more likely to die sitting on the toilet than you are riding a roller coaster. But one of those things seems scarier than the other one, right? So that's the thing, David. If you're gonna jump off that thing, it seems scary. And Logan said something once that I thought was actually genius. He said, your mind has just got to be smarter than your brain, right? Your brain.
That's a good interesting way to put it.
Brain detects, this is a scary situation. Your heart starts to race, and you start to sweat, and that's instinctual, right? That's fight or flight. But your mind has to say, wait a minute, this just seems scary. It isn't really scary. And there's some genius in that idea right there, which is the same thing, by the way. I do public speaking training for corporate executives sometimes, and these guys who make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, but you tell them, all right, get up in front of a room and I'm going to give you a topic and you got to speak on it. And they start breaking out in sweat. And it's just in their head. And I'm like, why are you so afraid? They're like, well, I don't like public speaking. Why? I've never liked. Why? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you're acting like there's an alligator going to get you. Like, and it's just all in their head. It's fascinating. And so, we have found what we love about these Be Brave challenges. We found roller coasters and drop towers and flat rides to be the safest way possible for someone to face their fears. And to see these kids
makes a lot of sense.
After they do a Be Brave challenge, or as you guys do your coaster challenge stuff, you know what it's like. Somebody who's afraid and they're terrified and they're shaking, but they just suck it up and get on there and ride. When they come off, their face is always lit up. And Logan's got 18 or 19 now of these Be Brave challenge compilation videos on Coaster Kids. And if you watch them, what you hear over and over and over again is these kids saying, I'm so proud of myself. I'm so proud of myself. And that's another thing when I talk to autism related audiences occasionally, kind of my little push is, there's a lot of focus in our society on accommodation and awareness, right? That whether it's Autism Speaks or whatever, they're talking about autism awareness, okay, which is good, and autism accommodation. Let's accommodate these people. But there's very little focus on what are some ways that we can put these kids or adults in a position where they feel proud of themselves. And that's what we're doing. That's what you guys are doing with Coaster Challenge is equipping and inspiring people to do something that they're going to be proud of. That's the mission statement. And I'm kind of jumping around in the story, but now that Logan's in high school, he started a new channel and we turned Coaster Kids into a nonprofit charity. It's a 501c3, nonprofit. But the mission statement of the Coaster Kids charity is, empowering and equipping kids to feel the pride and thrill that comes with overcoming fears. And there's not a lot of that. Not a lot of that in school. There's not a lot of that at home, but that's, it's what we're doing. And it's, I think it's really important.
That's great. Well, it's a lot to unpack there. A lot of good stuff. So I want to touch upon a few different topics that came up. So first of all, perhaps on the kind of lighter side of things, you mentioned Las Vegas. I've been to Las Vegas many times, whether it be for trade shows, for work over the years. I used to live in Arizona. That's where I went to college. And so we used to go there for weekends, trips all the time. And I remember I went to the Stratosphere when it was first built. And then, like you said, they just had the Big Shot and the Coaster, rode those. No problem. And then in later years, this is going back, I think the first time I rode them was back around 2010 or so. The newer rides, Insanity, I think is the one you were talking about, where it's just basically almost like a swing flat ride, smaller one, but it pivots out over open air, 1,000+ feet up there, whatever that height is.
Yeah.
Which again, it's the same ride. You'd be in trouble either way, but you have that increased fear, that irrational fear, because you've got that visual of being that much higher up. And then the other one that I've been on there, I forget the name of it, is, and I think for some people it's the most extreme, besides the parachuting one that David's talking about doing. The other ride is kind of like a cantilever, like a seesaw ride. You're a little like flat ride car. With I think
tips
7
you
other
over
people.
the edge. And
Yeah. And it tips you over. Yeah. And that was super fun. And so I know a lot of coaster enthusiasts, well, not a lot, a number of coaster enthusiasts that I've met that are afraid of heights, and they admit, and they say they're still afraid of heights after being on coasters that are 200, 300, 400 feet taller in the air. And they always say the same thing. It's on a coaster, they're up there so briefly that they can, and it's controlled, like you talked about Logan with, the coasters being controlled, that they're okay with it. But being, in a tall building or something like that scares them. Me, I'm not really afraid of heights. I'm, certainly aware of when I'm high up, and, if I was out in the open, I'd be careful, like rock climbing or something. But I've done a lot of travel over the years. And, Vegas, I mentioned Vegas, but I've been all over the world. And one of the things I love doing besides going to theme parks is I love doing kind of the sightseeing kind of stuff. And I love going to tall buildings. And I've been in several of the tallest buildings in the world, and not just inside them, but to the top observation deck that is available on them. I've been on the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. I've been Taipei 101, Shanghai, I believe it's called the Shanghai Tower. It's the tallest building in Shanghai, which is, again, in the top 10 in the world. I've been, I never made in the World Trade Center, unfortunately, before September 11th, but I have been both to the museum to pay my respects, as well as to the Freedom Tower. In any case, I've been into a couple other tall buildings like that, Sears Tower, and I've been into some of these buildings where on the observation decks, they have glass floors. And that doesn't really freak me out at all, and so forth. But again, I get that's a very common fear for people to be afraid of heights. The last thing I wanted to touch upon, just kind of in general, some things you mentioned, Jeff, is, all of us in life deal with challenges, whether it be, work challenges, personal challenges, relationship challenges, illness, whether it be a physical or mental. We talked about autism, for example. Well, for example, I have bipolar disorder, and I've dealt with 3 crippling depressions in my life. And for many people, including myself, when in a depression, basically it's about not being in the moment. So I'm either depressed, thinking about something bad that's happened in the past, whether it be recent or otherwise, and dwelling on that negativity. Or I'm worrying with that negative mindset, worrying about the future and what's going to come and how things are going to be, and mainly thinking they're only going to be awful, and that's anxiety. And depression and anxiety, unfortunately, are a match made in hell. But they are very much, coupled together for many, many people.
Two sides of the same coin.
Anxiety. Yeah, exactly. And anxiety is, I would say, anxiety and kind of its twin, panic attacks, are the worst flavor, the most extreme version of general fear. And it's just awful. And so I've learned, because of dealing with my own challenges, that how to deal with anxiety. And again, I'm never perfect at it, because it's the way the mind works. So we're our own worst enemy, as the saying goes. And that's a big part of that is anxiety and fear. But I've learned tips and tricks, and certainly how to kind of therapy, and a good positive therapy, rather than obsessive things. And thankfully I've never been addicted to drugs or alcohol, like so many people get addicted to as their coping mechanism for depression, anxiety, and fear. But I've tried to find positive things, fun hobbies that I can escape to, and just get a good mental break. And one of those, of course, as you probably can imagine I'm alluding to, is theme parks and roller coasters. And after dealing with my last depression, depression, which was the worst one I ever experienced back in 2015, which ended in basically early 2017, I came out of that realizing that leading up to it starting in 2015, one of the things that had happened is I had kind of forgotten, so to speak, about some of my hobbies, in particular theme parks and coasters. I still like them, but I wasn't going anymore, not very much at all. I was overworked and working way too many hours and doing that instead of, doing the self-therapy things, the fun things. And so coming out of that depression, I made a commitment to myself that I'm not going to let that happen again. And I'm going to, go back to the parks and ride new coasters and, a year or so later, I wound up in China riding all these crazy coasters there that I'd never been on, and getting the how could I say this? Reacquiring the life achievement, if you will, of having been to every Disney park on the planet. Because in 2011 or so, 2010, I went to Hong Kong Disneyland, and I at that point had been to every Disney park on the planet. And then, go figure, Disney, being the successful company they are, goes and builds another park in Shanghai. And I'm like, and I found out about that at the end of my depression. It had opened in 2016 during my depression. Like, I need to go to that park. And when I came out of my depression, and lo and behold, 2 years later, there I was in Shanghai. So I've really learned the coasters and theme parks, they're not just about having fun, or enjoying yourself with friends or family. They're really a healthy escape. And they're not just a healthy escape for me, they're a healthy escape for many people. And then meeting David, going again almost 3 years ago now, I had never met a person before who had a physical based affliction that riding theme park coasters and going to theme parks where those activities actually helped treat that illness. I was blown away. So, and this whole concept of fear, I think facing one's fears in one way, again, riding a coaster can help you face your fears in other areas that are not as easy to face if you do those directly. So, very good. Very good.
I totally agree, by the way, that, a lot of people, you ask about success, they're going to tell you focusing on the present, right? Stay in the present. The present's a gift. That's why they call it a present. And roller coasters, theme park rides, it's kind of the ultimate living in the present moment, right? When you're riding Fury 325, you're not thinking about what are people thinking of me, or I think I might fail my exam next week, or worried about things that happen in your past, right? You're holding on for dear life. Right. And that's, boy, man, you nailed it on that. A lot of the stuff, I work with a lot of people that are just trapped in their past. And, and I tell people that, one of the dumbest things you can do is hope for a different past. That is not going to happen. The past you got is the past you got. And then there's other people that are paralyzed of fear of the future, of what's going to happen. And you can't control that much either. And so, there may be something here somewhere, maybe a talk for IAPA or one of these conferences about, therapeutic advantages of theme park experiences. I think there's a lot of truth in that, and there's a lot of wisdom, and it's something people don't, they don't really talk much about. We've been talking to parks about, hosting these Coaster Kids events to help kids be brave. Of course, we launched it right before the pandemic. It's the worst time in the history of the world to launch a charity based on group meetups at theme park. That didn't work. But we're hoping that some of these parks kind of get on board with, the charities that send sick kids to parks. That's great. The ones that help, poor people take advantage of the parks. That's awesome. But this is a whole different kind of thing that I think strikes really at what the heart of what an amusement, industry facility can be, which is something that is helping families, helping people.
Absolutely. I can tell you, as I mentioned, the last depression I dealt with was the worst one I dealt with. And it lasted from August of 2015 until basically early January of 2017. And I remember there were a couple of real key, looking back, hindsight's 2020, back in November, December of 2016, pivotal things that happened just by chance that really led me to help come out of my depression. And one of them was I had not been to a single theme park during that entire depression. I was on disability from work for quite some time. I had plenty of time to go to parks, but being in that throes of depression, anxiety, ping-ponging back and forth, the last thing I was about to do was leave the home and go do something fun or good for me. Well, as fortune would have it, some friends of ours were going to Disneyland on a Saturday in the middle of December. and they asked me if I wanted to go. And of course I was like, I don't really want to go. I mean, I'm not, I'm not feeling up to it, but they kind of dragged me to the theme park, so to speak. And I went with them, and there I was, in that cold day in December, beautiful Disneyland, dressed up like, beautifully, as it always is for the holidays. And, I remember being there on the lines for the rides, talking to my friends, joking around, riding the rides and experiencing the shows, etc. And yeah, during that day, I certainly was at times thinking about my issues, lamenting the past, being nervous about the future and what was to come. But I had breaks. I had time, especially riding the rides, as you pointed out, Jeff. Granted, they're not, giant thrill rides like Fury or big coasters. It's Disneyland, but still, they're coasters. They're Gardens of the Galaxy. It's a drop ride. There's definitely that shots of adrenaline and so forth here and there. And just being in that environment, escaping the world and enjoying those light adrenaline experiences, I got critical breaks from myself, from my mind, from the prison of my mind. And I started feeling better over the next few weeks. And then coming into January, a couple of weeks later, here I was feeling great again. I snapped out of it. And that trip to Disneyland was pivotal. It wasn't the only thing, but it was pivotal. So I find this fascinating. Yeah, me too.
I found in my experience, I think sadness can be contagious and so can happiness. They call Disney the happiest place on earth for a reason. But, sometimes if I'm not in a great mood in the summertime, I'll just go over to Kings Island, just walk around for a little bit, and I'll use my dining plan, get a bite to eat. And there's just something about being around people that are laughing and having fun. And as opposed to human nature is when you're feeling sad, you want to get around other sad people, and that doesn't help much.
Yeah,
Right.
I can definitely. Something about when it comes to Disneyland. Everyone calls it the Disney magic, because there are times in my life where, I've gone through depression 3 times in my life over major situations, from the economic crash back in 2009 to the fallout of my wife and I, our marriage not working out. That really sunk me down probably to the worst depression I've ever had in my life. But I spent a lot of time. I used to spend Sundays by myself. I would go to Disneyland and go to Disney's California Adventure. And I don't know what it is, but when I'm walking around that park, I'll go grab me a bite to eat. I like the fact that being a single rider, I can get on a ride faster than if you're with a group. But I don't know. It's just like when I step foot on that ground, and it's just, everyone calls it like the Disney magic. It's like, it just makes me feel a lot better. And then when I leave the park, I actually get back on my feet, and I'm right back of just moving forward and saying, things will get better ahead. And we got to keep that in.
Yep.
So
yeah, I think there's something to it for sure.
Absolutely. And David, I have to agree. And I guess this is a coming attraction, heads up for our listeners, that we will be, but David and I both being big Disney fans, and other people that we know and involved with this podcast and with Coaster Challenge also being Disney fans, that we're going to be doing some episodes, some podcast episodes, at least one coming up that's going to be more focused on that Disney magic and the concept of that. And as someone who's been back to Disney myself a couple of times now since they reopened last year, but during this COVID times, as they call it, or pandemic times, where with the masks and the social distancing and the lack of meet and greets and parades and so forth, I have some perspectives that I'll share when we talk on those episodes about how the Disney magic has changed, at least temporarily. But there is something to be said about that Disney magic. It's a real thing. So let's go ahead and move on here. So Jeff, you and Logan use roller coasters like people like David and I do to help overcome fear. Tell us a little bit more about that. I mean, I know you talked about that earlier, but perhaps there's something else you'd like to share about specifically using roller coasters, these controlled, safe experiences to overcome fear.
Here's what we found. We've done a bunch of these meetups. We've been I think in the last 6 years, we've been to 80 different amusement parks in 8 different countries. And so we've kind of been all around. And most of the time, some, kids will come out that want to hang out with Logan and meet with them. And it's funny because sometimes the parents will be like, oh, well, Jimmy's here. He loves Logan's YouTube videos, but he doesn't ride coasters. He's not going to ride coasters today. He's just here to meet Logan. And I always look at the parents and I go, oh, Jimmy's going to ride today. You know, nobody chickens out in front of Logan. And it's funny how many times there's been a kid that was totally afraid, and Logan will just look at him and like, hey, we're riding. Are you coming? And they're like, yeah. And they get in line and they ride, and the parents are in tears. They're like, I can't believe he rode the beast. You know, and so there's something about positive peer pressure that I think that's a real thing too, right? That nobody wants to be the kid who chickens out. I've also learned, though, we've had people that have dragged their friends and like, you know, Susan is afraid of coasters. Logan, can you magically heal her of her fear? And the question is, do you want to overcome your fear? Because some people don't. Right. Some people aren't ready. Right. And I've kind of learned to look a kid in the eye and like look into their soul, like Ghost Rider, you know, and I can tell by looking at a person in the eye, do they want to ride and they're just afraid, or are they not ready? And if they're not ready, it's the wrong thing to do to try to twist their arm to ride. But most often, I would say 9 out of 10 times, they want to ride. That's why they're there. And we've tried logic. You know, it's fascinating that some people need logic, right? We were out at what's the park that's got Boulder Dash? Lake Compounds. And there was a kid that was there that was afraid to ride the Skyrocket 2. What's it called? Phobia Fear. And so there was a teen.
Yeah,
you know,
I think so.
Here's Logan was there. Logan's 12 years old. Here's this kid who's like 17. And he's terrified and he's shaking, and in his mind going upside down, right? That's the thing. He'll ride Boulder Dash all day, which is probably more dangerous when you think about what's more likely to go flying off the track. But he was afraid of that Skyrocket too, because it went upside down, and it went upside down backwards and forward. And so I was really proud of Logan, who just kind of pulled this kid aside and said, hey, listen, how many times have you tried to get on that ride and then chickened out? And he's like, I've done that like 10 times. And Logan said, so how did you feel when you chickened out? I felt like crap. Yeah, chickening out feels like crap. So I want you to think ahead, like just 10 minutes ahead from right now, an hour ahead from right now, from this minute. If you chicken out, how are you going to feel on the way home? Like crap. But if you suck it up and be brave and get on that coaster and ride it, how are you going to feel? Man, that would feel really good. And we found if you can get people to kind of see past the scary part to how they're going to feel later, they almost always ride. And we've seen in that kid, if you go look up coaster kids at Lake Compounds, and that kid is like, oh, my favorite coaster now. It's my favorite ride in the whole park, and I'm so proud of myself. But what they're proud of, I think, is that they did it, right? Like they got on. They're the ones who did it. They overcame it, But the other kids, I found logic doesn't work. There was a kid at Cedar Point that was afraid of Top Thrill Dragster. I could see how you'd be afraid of that. And I was trying to use logic, and I said, well, you know, think of it this way. If you fall off a Top Thrill Dragster, you're going to die. But same thing, if you fall off a Blue Streak, you're going to die too. You'll be equally dead, either one. Not one of those isn't more dangerous than the other one. And the kid goes, oh my God, now I'm afraid of Blue Streak.
Great. Nice job, Jeff.
Yeah. Well, sorry, didn't help that kid. But so sometimes it's logic. Sometimes it's peer pressure. Sometimes, you know, we've had kids just say, you know, I'm just tired of letting my fears control me. And like, man, what an awesome thing. And I really believe what you said earlier, Andrew, that if you can overcome your fear of coasters, you can overcome your fear of anything. And, you know, I'd say a lot of the kids that we meet, what they struggle with, you've been around adolescent coaster enthusiasts, and like we've been around a lot of them. And you know what? A lot of them feel like weirdos when they're at school, when they're around their friends, because they just want to talk about, you know, their favorite, you know, Intamin launch coaster. And their friends are like, dude, you're weird, right? I mean, the kid wearing his Six Flags St. Louis t-shirt to school, nobody's like, hey, awesome t-shirt. You know, or I survived King to Ka. They're like, what? You know, and so those kids feel like weirdos. What we found, and it's, you know, man, I'm thankful for it, that these parents have told me over and over, I mean, like hundreds of times, parents have told me, you know, my kid feels like they're all alone and they feel like a weirdo. And then they found Logan on YouTube. And they said, Mom,
that's awesome.
That kid from Ohio is just like me. That kid from America is just like me. We met an awesome family at Fantasia Land in Germany. And the dad was, you know, Frederick was the kid. He showed up with his Coaster Kid sweatshirt on. He was so proud. And And I'm just blown away that some kid in Germany is wearing a sweatshirt my son sold on his website. How crazy is that?
That's cool.
You guys are my age, the way we grew up, and I didn't have any friends in Germany when I was growing up. And so, but this kid, Frederick, is hanging with Logan and riding all the rides at Fantasia Land. And the dad is just tears in his eyes. And I said, you okay, sir? And he goes, he said, my son's on the autism spectrum. He gets bullied at school every day. He's been asking us to homeschool him for 2 years, but we just can't. That won't work for our family. And then one day he said, Dad, that boy from America is just like me. And look how popular he is. And look how many friends he has. And here's this dad like weeping while we're in line for Taryn. And it changed our lives, that it gave our family hope. And I'm like, what a cool thing. I think there's a lot of bad things that have happened on the internet. There's a lot of bad things that have happened in the coaster community. There's a lot of good. There is a lot of good. That YouTube and the internet and the coaster community in a way to bring people together. And so for these kids, and then when we do these big meetups, for there to be like 60 kids and they all love roller coaster. And some of them are quirky and a little weird, but they're not weird that day because you know what? Everyone's quirky and weird in this group. But it's fascinating. I'll tell you an interesting story about that. We met one family. I think it was at Cedar Point, and they had a son who was really into roller coasters and couldn't wait to meet Logan. And the dad said, he goes, my daughter is really into owls. And I said, what? Like the bird? Yeah, she's into owls. That's her thing. And she always felt like a weirdo. And then she found an owl community on the internet, and they have conferences and they wear t-shirts and they're like, who are you? And it's the exact same psychology, right? I used to be really involved in comic books and going to Comic-Con conferences, and it's the same thing, right? That, hey, you want to dress up like the Green Power Ranger? Have at it. Nobody here cares.
I think like everybody's got something that they're passionate about. Like I know, Andrew, you're big on cars. You're a car guy.
Yep.
I'm a Lego fanatic. I love Legos. I have billions of Lego pieces. I build incredible models. I'm in the middle of building a huge Lego roller coaster in my garage right now. It's taking months to do, but it's going to look
really
nice.
Cool.
And it's amazing. Like the internet is an amazing place because you're able to find group chats and able to find a community where people are able to share or swap ideas. And I ended up meeting a guy in the Lego community who builds incredible Lego roller coasters. And I was like, he made a Ferris wheel from scratch. And I'm like, how did you do that? And he literally sent me the instructions.
Wow.
I was like, thank you. I appreciate that.
It's amazing. I think that's a healthy message that, whatever you're into, that's cool, man. You're not weird. You're just you be you. And
right.
But you know what else I've learned? All of these fandom communities can be a little toxic because it starts being this human nature competition that I know more than you, and that makes me better than you. I'm not a big fan with these kids using the term GP because it's very derogatory and basically saying that because I know more about coasters, I'm better than you are. And that person's looking at you like you're the weirdo. And, but that's why, I don't know if you ever seen, I have an Instagram account called Coaster Dad, where I try to, be a positive voice in the coaster community, especially to a lot of these teenagers. And I'll do like a Q&A and every now and then. And the questions I get are like, I'm afraid to talk to girls. What should I do? Okay, well, let me give you, and it's funny. They're not asking me coaster questions. It's people that are together in the coaster community, but they got the same problems as everybody's got. Or my parents don't accept me, what do I do? Or, I'm feeling depressed and so I try to be a positive voice. One of the things I've been trying to do, Logan and I both, for the last 5 years, is push the coaster community away from arguments about what's the best coaster and instead reframe the conversation to what is your favorite coaster. And I tell these kids, I tell these kids, there is no best coaster. There's no Olympics for roller coasters, right? With a gold medal winner. Even the award things are all skewed. And so, but everybody likes different things, right? I like floater airtime more than ejector airtime. So my favorites are going to be completely different to somebody who, they want someone who wants to gray out on a roller coaster. That is not my thing. I rode Intimidator 305 and my vision narrowed down and I go, Logan, what was that? He goes, that's a gray out, man. He goes, that's the best part. And I go, not for me, it wasn't. I don't want to experience that ever again. Everybody likes different things. And I think it's healthy, right? Nobody debates about what's the best ice cream flavor. They talk about what's your favorite ice cream flavor, right? How weird would you be? Chocolate's the best. And if you don't like chocolate, I hate you. But I mean, Logan's had people, and I don't even joke about it. He's had people threaten to murder him because of his ranking of roller coasters.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. I would tell Logan. Yeah, for Logan, he's not alone on that. Myself, I know several YouTubers, podcasters. I work with celebrities, in my profession, and yeah, it's really sad. I don't know, Jeff. Would you say that's just people because jealousy? Because of success? I mean, part of
their own fear.
Part of it's human nature that people want to feel better than other people, and
it's
ever
insecurity.
Ever since kids were in the sandbox, right? I'm going to tear you down and make fun of you to try to make myself feel better. I do a lot of training now dealing with difficult people and how to deal with bullies, and I'm like, what you got to realize is that the bullies are cowards on the inside, and they're trying to pull you down to make themselves feel better. The problem with that is it's temporary, because deep in their soul they know that that's a dirtbag thing to do, so they feel worse about themselves. So they try to tear people down more, and it's just a downward spiral. That's part of it. There is some jealousy factor that, Logan's ridden 500 roller coasters. And so there'll be like adults on Reddit, like ripping the crap out of it. I've deleted Reddit. I'm like, that's the most negative people right there. But people just, this spoiled, privileged kid. And, like when we went to Europe, we spent a week in Europe. We went to 21 theme parks in 22 days. And people were just so jealous and like, what a spoiled kid. And I'm like, hey, you know what? Logan earned the money to go on that trip and paid for himself, and he paid for me too. And if you spent your time trying to create something people were interested in instead of tearing down people you don't know, maybe you could have some success too. And so it's kind of a litmus test, because when I met David and he found out what we were doing, he goes, it's awesome what you guys are doing. When I saw what he was doing, I go, that's awesome. Even the other YouTubers, we have conversations all the time. We went on our trip to Europe, and we were with, Taylor from Coaster Studios and Harry from CoasterBot. And we're all good friends. All of us are all good friends, and people try to pit us against each other. Like, well, CoasterBot's better than, and we're like, guys, it's different things. It'd be different if YouTube said you were only allowed to subscribe to one coaster channel. Well, then it would be some fierce competition. But we all do different things. We all do it in our own way. We try to focus more on helping people, because that's kind of in our spiritual wheelhouse. Other people, that's not their thing. I don't know if you guys ever watch CoasterBot, Harry, but him, he's one of the coolest people we've met doing this. Got a chance to go to the UK and hang out with those guys. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I've seen CoasterBot's videos. Very awesome.
So I think the next thing we want to talk about is we've kind of covered some of these other questions. But let's talk a little bit more about coasters. We've talked a lot about fear here and a lot of good conversation in that regard. So, Jeff, you and Logan, you've ridden myself, and I know David's getting up there too now, hundreds of coasters all over the world. What would you say is not the best? Again, I agree with what you said earlier. What would you say are some of your and Logan's personal favorites?
My favorite coaster, I've ridden over 300. My current favorite is, and Logan's right here. Logan, what's your favorite these days? The Top Thrill Dragster?
Probably Top Thrill Dragster, yeah.
Yeah, Logan, talk about the bullies. Logan's decided he likes Top Thrill Dragsters more of his favorite than Steel Vengeance. And people that are part of the Steel Vengeance religion take blasphemy at such an idea. But he said, hey, it's the one coaster that my heart still races before I get on it. I'm a little nervous to ride it every time. And that's why he loves it. I would say Top Thrill Dragster's in my top 10 for sure. My favorite ever was Terran at Fantasia Land.
Oh, nice.
Terran
nice.
Blew me away. The theming of it. And part of it is, a lot of you enthusiasts will study something before you go, and you know all about it. You know more about it before it's built than I know getting onto it. And so I didn't realize that it was a multi-launch. And so when halfway through that ride, whoa, it launched us again. It caught me totally off guard. And I just started laughing. It cracked me up. So that's one of my favorites. I love GCI coasters. So I loved Wicker Man in England. My favorite. This is let's see what else. Probably I made a video for Logan's channel and it got like 45,000 views, and I was like, people got too much time on their hands if they want to spend that much. You want to see what my coaster favorite is. I would say Terran number 1 and number 2 Fury 325. And
excellent.
But again, I love floater airtime, right? I love the B&M clamshell restraints are my favorite. You know, someone asked me if you could design any roller coaster, I'd say a top thrill dragster type launch coaster with a top hat, but with B&M clamshell restraints. That would that'd be pretty wild. What else? Shambhala was one of my favorites. That's in my top 5. Shambhala at Portaventura in Spain. My favorite, GCI is Wicker Man. My favorite RMC. And again, you talk about how people like different things. Can you guess what my favorite RMC is? I've ridden almost every RMC in the world. I haven't ridden Railblazer, and nobody's ridden the new one in Tampa yet. But I think I've read all the rest. Ridden all the rest. What do you think my favorite is, David? You got a guess? Do you know?
Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman.
I like that more than I thought, because I thought it might be too intense for me, and I did love it. That's the only RMC I've ridden that Logan hasn't ridden yet, because I was speaking at a conference in San Antonio.
David, any guesses?
So you're talking about RMC?
Favorite RMC?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's going to be Steel Vengeance.
It's not, although I do love Steel Vengeance.
No.
And if you were going to say what's the best coaster, there's an argument that Steel Vengeance delivers, one of the best ride experiences for sure.
Yeah.
I think that's indisputable.
I know.
My favorite RMC, I liked it because it had one of the best views that I've ever seen at the top of a coaster, and it was Wildfire at Kolmården Zoo in Sweden.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
That thing blew my mind. You get up to the top of the lift hill, you look off to your left, and there's this gorgeous lake and these mountains and the clouds and forest, and it like literally, you've heard the expression, oh my gosh, that took my breath away. It literally took my breath away. And I usually don't re-ride coasters a bunch of times. 2 or 3 times in a day is plenty for me. But I rode Wildfire a dozen times that day, just because I kept wanting to look off to my left and see that view. And I wish I could.
Sometimes you want to wish you get stuck on the lift hill in that one spot where you can just see that view for a while. Because I'm somebody who loves looking at scenic views like that.
And I'm like that too with.
That's cool. Yeah.
Millennium Force. A lot of people badmouth Millennium Force, and I love getting up there and you look off, and you can see almost all the way to Canada, and just a beautiful view.
I think
I get after people sometimes. I'm kind of a positive attitude guy. I like try to find the good in everything. Try to be a good finder.
Yeah.
That's one of my rules in life. I tell people, hey, you want to be happy? Learn how to find the good in every person and every situation, and you'll be
absolutely.
But when I hear people going on and on and on about how much they hate Millennium Force, I told one guy, and I was trying to be as polite as I could. I said, if you can't have fun on Millennium Force, I think you've forgotten what roller coasters and amusement parks are all about.
Amen.
On that.
Amen. Yep.
What I mean? This is you can say it's not your favorite intimate or whatever. And you know what? When I wrote one of my top 10 is Expedition G-Force. And it was better than Millennium Force, I think. But that doesn't mean that I don't have fun on Millennium Force ever again because I like G-Force better. That's crazy talk, in my opinion.
Jeff, I do got to ask you, and I know this is a podcast, and so this is an audio form, but I'm going to, you might have noticed my background here changed. So I'm going to guess based on Terran being your favorite, and Fury being your second favorite, enjoying kind of the clamshell restraints, that you're probably looking forward to what I'm very much looking forward to riding here very soon. And what I got to see a preview of going back to Universal Studios and Islands of Adventure a couple weeks ago for the first time since last June. And that is, of course, Velocicoaster. So I'm guessing you're going to be looking forward to that. That's Terran's big brother with a top hat. And
yeah, it looks. I haven't seen a bunch of, but we were down at Universal Studios and Islands of Adventure back in November, and so they still had the walls up and they were building it. And so I haven't seen any POVs. I don't like to study it too much, but it sounds like everything that I like. I love launches. I love To a degree, I love rapid transitions. You know, sometimes when I'm on Maverick,
Yep.
it's a little too rapid for me.
Yep.
You know, the kids laugh at me if I, you know, again, you can't see this if you're watching my video instead of a podcast. If I ride Maverick and I see that there's one of those turns to the left, I'll like lean way over before it comes. And then when Maverick turns, it just pulls me up straight. I don't like the sensation of getting too much. Yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to that. But again, yeah, I think it's healthy to have a recognition that people love different things. Logan and some of his friends are going through a phase where they love getting beat up on coasters, right? That the more violent, the better. And so they go to Holiday World and they'll ride Raven and Legend, you know, and Voyage all day.
Yeah.
Just, they're like, that was awesome. I rode Legend and was like, I need to go to the chiropractor. Maybe I'm too old for this.
Right.
And
right.
But again, it's like, it'd be like saying, well, you know, but I like lobster and someone else doesn't because they're allergic to shellfish. Well, that doesn't hurt my lobster dining experience that someone else doesn't like it.
Yeah.
You know, people like different things. People are into different things. And I think the more we can push that reality out to people, and I think it says something, you know, one other little thing I'll touch on. We're talking about psychology here a little bit. It says something about you when you feel you need to tear a coaster down or tear people down that like that coaster.
Yep.
You know, when Logan first started getting some hate on the internet, we were kind of new to the whole YouTube thing and Instagram. And I thought it was bizarre that people are just hating people making videos about this stupid kid and blah, blah, blah. And he's retarded. And I mean, just on and on. And I was really concerned about it. And I asked Logan one time, this is probably when he was 10 years old. I said, what do you think about all that? And he goes, you know, people that spend their time, spend their energy tearing down me and they don't even know me. I think that says more about them than it says about me.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And I said, not only is that true, but God, what if I'd have known that when I was 11 years old?
I wish.
Right.
Yeah, that you know what, other people's opinions, they just don't matter. I mean, so he's learned pretty quickly that, right, he cares about the opinions of people he respects, but some random negative stranger out there.
You know, that's probably the bravest thing to hear Logan say that at his age, because when I was at his age, you know, I was badly bullied, really bad in school. Not just even before I was diagnosed with Tourette's. I was just bullied because I was just a quiet kid. I kind of kept to myself. I didn't have I had like one good friend in elementary school, but yeah, it just took one kid to just bully you. And then all of a sudden you got the whole school bullying you. Yeah. And I think it accelerated more with my Tourette's in elementary school. By the time I got to middle school and high school, I was actually doing good because I went to a different school. I went to one middle school, and then majority of the kids at my elementary school went to a different middle school because I lived in a different zip code. And I was able to build a good group of friends in middle school, all the way into high school. And you know what? I have been out of high school now for going on 22 years, and I still see all my high school friends to this day. We still hang out.
That's great.
JD and I here on the podcast, we've known each other since middle school. Jenna, who's one of our correspondents, I've known her since middle school. So a lot of people that are involved in my organization, I still went to school with them, which is a blessing because not many people can say they're still with their friends from high school, you know, almost 40 years old. So it's a blessing.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I will say it's gotten worse since I think when we were kids, because the bullying used to stop when you go home at the end of the day. And now with social media, it's incessant. It is all the time. But there's pros and cons to everything, because I think some of these kids are learning to be a little more bulletproof. You know, my daughters are funny. You know, Logan's got 2 older sisters, and they're like, Dad, you get so worked up about things that people say on social media about your kids. And I'm like, just, you know, how dare they, you know? And my daughter Natalie was like, Dad, you don't even know who they are. It's just some stranger. Who cares? And why? And she said, why do you take it personally? And I said, well, you know, when we were growing up, the only people that bullied you were people you knew. So it was personal. Right. Yeah. That it was always to your face or behind your back at school. And so it's even been good for me to kind of learn, you know, I used to get in these debates with people on social media. And then I realized, you know what these people want is attention, and I'm giving them attention. How dumb is that?
Yeah.
And so now I'm like, block,
Yeah.
Delete, block, and they'll
Yep.
make up a new account and start, at it again. I'm like, block. Takes them 5 minutes to make a new account. Takes me 5 seconds to block them. That's a battle they're not going to win.
A very good friend of mine, a good friend of my mom's, actually said something to me that really made sense. Stuck to my head. She goes, negativity attracts negativity. She goes, when you're negative, anybody else out there who's negative, they're going to be attracted to you. They're going to orbit around your life. And then it's going to be hard to get out of that. The more positive you are, the negativity usually goes out, when you're more positive. So
yeah,
I've been trying to keep that philosophy in me.
I think you're right. And here's what I'll say in defense of the coaster community, just so no one thinks I'm like knocking the coaster community. And I bet this is true in every fandom enthusiast community, is that, how many members are there of ACE? 12,000, 15,000, whatever that number is.
Oh, many thousands. Yeah. Yeah.
But out of those people, how many of them are total jerks who are out there like a dozen at the most? Right? They're just
not many. Yeah, at all.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's a handful of total losers. And they usually kind of move on to something else if you don't give them the attention that they want. But we have found, some of the nicest, most beautiful spirits that I've ever met in my whole life are people that we've met at theme parks, people that are into coasters, people, just wonderful, wonderful people. It's been, I have a YouTube channel called An Epic Life, where I'm trying to make some positive videos. And I just recorded one today about the Coaster Kid story. And and I don't know what exactly I'm going to call the video, but I think I started off by saying, let me tell you about the most amazing project of my entire life. It's the most amazing thing I've ever been a part of. And it's amazing people. And it just seems like every week, every month, we're meeting people that just are awesome people. And that this hobby has brought them together, which is pretty cool.
Absolutely. I agree. And like you said, I've met a lot of great positive people. In fact, one couple that I met, actually, technically speaking, met in person only a few months ago, but have talked to now for a couple of years. They're big fans of Coaster Challenge. And in fact, they're going to be on the podcast here in a couple episodes coming up. Larry and Jean Lines. They're my role models. You know them, of course. Yeah, they're in Ohio. Yes, of course. And they're my coaster enthusiast role models because, Jeff, you were talking just a few minutes ago about how, Logan being a 15-year-old, all these kids, they're very limber, they're young. They just make this habit lately of going on all these coasters that beat them up. Whereas if you ride on a rough ride, one time, it's time for the chiropractor. Well, I'm in my 40s. I still ride coasters pretty well. But yeah, if it's a rough ride, I'm going to feel it. I'm going to be like, I'm not going to marathon that. I'll do it one and done for the day. And Larry and Jean, I've hung out with them at parks. They're in their 70s. But they are fit. And, coaster enthusiasts, being a coaster enthusiast, it's almost like a sport in a way. It's very much a physical thing. And the effects it can have on your body. And the more in shape that you are, the better off you are. And Larry and Jean, they might not be spring chickens age-wise, but they are in good shape and they exercise. And you know what? They ride the coasters really well. And I want to be them, in 30 years from now, 25
Amen.
years from now, when I'm, say, their age now. So I aspire to be it.
They're living the dream.
And early. Yeah.
I was going to say, I got to tell you the story.
I'm really looking forward to talking to them.
I got to tell you the story of how we met them, that we were at Cedar Point. This was in the early days of Steel Vengeance, maybe even, the first rider event. And here comes this couple, right? And they're, gray haired, older couple. And oh my gosh, it's Logan. It's Logan and Jeff. We just want to thank you guys. And we're like, thank us for what? And they said, we just took a trip to Europe and we watched all of your videos from your Europe trip. And that's how we planned our trip. On what parks do we want to go to? How many days do we want to? And I'm like, that's amazing. Like when we started making these crazy little videos, who'd have thought there'd be a retired couple planning their world vacation around the videos that we filmed. And, but we've got to be really good friends with them. And I'll tell you, I told someone Larry and Jean are living the dream, and they're like, yeah, they're riding lots of roller coasters.
Yep.
I go, yeah, but that's not what I mean. Here's what I mean. Living the dream is that everywhere they go, they're a blessing to other people, right? Everybody that they hang out with is better off for knowing that they are
absolutely.
They're kind and they're encouraging and they're sweet. And, I gave some Coaster Kids T-shirts for their grandkids to be able to wear because one of their grandkids was doing a Be Brave challenge on Millennium Force. We'll see them at Cedar Point sometimes with their grandkids, and I'm like, man, that's living the dream too. Being able to do stuff with your kids and grandkids, that's a pretty awesome thing.
Yeah, I got to meet Larry.
That's awesome.
I met Larry a couple of times in Kings Island. I haven't met Gene yet, but I met Larry. Wonderful man. Him and I talk all the time. I think the biggest thing, like you said, Andrew, they're physically fit. Larry would message me daily because I've literally, since I started riding roller coasters, I literally dropped 125 pounds just
awesome.
from all the moving and exercising. And Larry we're friends on Facebook, and he saw that I was going to the gym every night, like 5 nights a week. And he would email me. He was like a motivation coach. He was sitting there like, you can do it, David. He goes, here's some pointers. Make sure to do your sit-ups, make sure to do your rips, make sure to work on your legs on this day, So him and I were always exchanging. So like, we were kind of like helping each other. And it was like, if Larry's listening, thank you for that. I really appreciate all the advice, and I look forward to seeing him again soon too. So
one last question. It's kind of related to the previous question, and then it's kind of a wrap up. So we're actually pretty much close to being done. So let's go ahead here. So we talked about your favorite coasters. What about, I know you've traveled all over the world like I have. What about your favorite parks? Maybe a couple of your favorite parks. And it could be here in the US. So. All right.
Yeah, we've been, I think I'm coming, I need to total it up because I'm coming up on lifetime 100 amusement parks and theme parks that I've been to. And, when we were at Dorney Park, we got talking to the guy who is the president there, runs that park. And I told him I do speaking and training. He said, do you ever do training for theme parks? And I go, no, I never have. But, I'm probably the only professional speaker and trainer in the world that's been to 90 theme parks. And so I started putting some thought into what I like and what I don't like. And so I'm going to answer the question in 2 parts. Like, what are my personal favorites? My personal favorite part, and again, people have different things that are important to them. My personal favorite parks are ones that have supported my son. So
okay, that's good.
So my number one favorite park is Kentucky Kingdom because
I knew you were going to say that. Nice.
Somebody, and again, we've had talk about some jealous people that are ripping us, but somebody sent a link. We made a little documentary kind of movie about Logan's story, and someone sent it to Ed Hart. And Ed Hart sent it out to all the employees of Kentucky Kingdom. This is about 4 years ago, and said, hey guys, this is the power of theme parks and roller coasters to change lives. And he contacted me and said, what can we do to support Logan? And I said, well, we've been talking to these Cedar Fair parks and these Six Flag parks about having an official Coaster Kids Day at their park, and they never want to do it. And he goes, we'll do it. And so we had a Coaster Kids Day, and they did a catered lunch for all of Logan's friends, and 140 people showed up for this Coaster Kids Day. And Ed Hart came out at lunch and was speaking to the kids at the picnic pavilion and the families, and he was blown away. He's like, "Oh my gosh, where are all these people from?" I said, Ed, watch this. I go, "Hey, raise your hand if this is the first time you've ever been to Kentucky Kingdom," and 80% of them raised their hand. And he goes, wow. Right. And I go, let me ask you this question. I go, let's go around the room here. Where are you guys from? And people start shouting out, we're from New Jersey. We're from Alabama. We're from Portland, Oregon. We're from Florida.
Wow.
We're from Seattle. And I'm like, Ed, do you get a lot of people from Oregon swinging by Kentucky Kingdom? He's like, nope. And I go, this is what can happen if you partner with people in the coaster community. And they ended up actually making a sign for Logan that they put on the wall by Kentucky Flyer, and they're selling some of his T-shirts at the park. And he, one of my coolest memories was when they first said they're going to build a new coaster, and we didn't even know what it was yet, right? Like a year and a half ahead. He said, Jeff, when we open our next coaster, I want you and Logan to be on the front row of the first train. And I said, oh, that's a nice thing to say. That's a nice thing to say. Fast forward a year and a half later, I'm like, he probably forgot that. I'm not going to bring it up. So we go to Kentucky Flyer Media Day, and there's, Coaster Studios is there, and Coaster Force is there, and a lot of the big names, and they're all getting ready to ride. And they're like, wait, Jesse, the VP of marketing there is like, wait, hold up. Mr. Hart wants to make sure that he promised Logan to be on the front row of the first train. And I'm like, there's a guy with character right there. And so some of those parks are near and dear to me. We had a great experience at Six Flags New England with Jen McGrath, who's out there, who called in the media, and they gave away like 150 tickets to autism charities in honor of Logan when we were there. And so those are my favorite parks, are the ones that recognize that we're trying to do something special and go out of their way, to work with us in some way. But if you're just talking about pure favorite parks, I would say my number one favorite park I've ever been to in the world is Fantasia Land in Germany.
Nice.
That blew me away. And I'll tell you what, I'm a kind of a theming guy, right? And you go to Europe and it's like, wow, it's a whole nother level of theming. It's like Universal or Disney or even better. But one of the things I like about Fantasia Land is every coaster they have is an awesome version of that coaster, right? Terran is an awesome launch coaster. The Black Mamba is an awesome B&M invert. Even the kiddie coasters, their mine train, I don't remember what it was called, Colorado something. There's an awesome mine train. So Fantasia Land, probably number one. Number two, I think for me would be Alton Towers in England. Alton Towers blew me away. You walk in there and you're like, where's the coasters? They don't have, oh yeah, they're here. They're just below where you can even see them. And so you walk around, it's just beautiful. Number three, I would say, is probably Europa Park in England. We spent 2 days at Europa Park, and that place is pretty awesome. And the Mock Rides family actually gave us a tour of their factory, which was pretty cool when we were there. Next would probably be Portaventura in Spain. That place was pretty awesome. We really, again, some awesome theming, some fun rides. And then also all of my favorites are in Europe. My favorite US park, I probably got to go with Kings Island, because that's just my childhood is all wrapped up in Kings Island. And when I walk in there and I see the fountains and I see the tower, and smell the food, it just brings me back. After Kings Island, probably Dollywood. I'm a big Dollywood fan. I could, you talk, Dave, you're trying to lose some weight, but I could eat cinnamon bread for every meal. I think I'd be happy.
I had the honor of having that last year.
Oh,
that
boy.
was.
But
hopefully that comes out to Kentucky Kingdom with her.
Well, yeah, and that's part of. We'll see if Kentucky Kingdom kind of keeps working with Logan. I'm not sure if they will now that they're part of Hershey. We'll see. But when I talk, I've got a chance to have great conversations with a lot of theme park senior management, right? The owners of these parks and the presidents and executive directors. And they asked me, all right, Jeff, you've been to 90 different theme parks in the last 6 years. That's probably not a record, but that's a lot. What's the difference between the great parks and the not so great parks? And I tell them, it's not the rides or the coasters. I think the very best parks have done a good job of hiring the right people and training those people so that they care if the visitors have a good day. That's what you get at Dollywood, mostly because the workers are all retired grandmas and grandpas, but that's what you get at Disney, right? Everybody at Disney has been trained. Right. We're here to deliver magic for these people. That's what you don't get
Universal
in
as well. Yeah.
in most of the Six Flags parks. What, you go
Agreed.
to Six Flags, Great Adventure or Great America. What percentage of the employees give a damn if you have a good day or not? Not a very high percentage.
I agree.
Right? I think Kings Island does a better job. I think Cedar Point does a pretty good job. And a lot of it is because of their international students. They get those people coming in from Bulgaria and Romania, and they're just so excited to be working at Cedar Point that they, but that, to me, that's a big difference. And so when I'm talking to, smaller upcoming parks, I'm like, hey, if you want to double your attendance, it's not just building a new coaster, but why don't you hire the right people who care about working here and train them to deliver a great customer experience? I do a lot of training in the restaurant business, and I tell them the same things. You're not going to double your revenue by having some magic entree. It's going to be by delivering a great dining experience. So those are some of my favorites.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Thank you, Jeff. So just to touch upon that. So you mentioned overall Fantasia Land's your favorite. Fantasia Land, I've been to a lot of parks all over the world. Probably up, I don't know my park count is, and my coaster count's 330 right now, but park count's probably up around yours. I've been all over Asia, Middle East, US, of course, and Europe. But one park I've not been to is Fantasia Land. It's my number one haven't been to yet park that I really want to go to. And the primary reason, there's a couple reasons. One is to ride Terran, because Maverick's my favorite coaster. And I know Terran's its big brother. And it's also why I'm more excited about Velocicoaster opening here in Orlando than I am about Iron Gwazi. I'm looking forward to both, but I'm looking forward to Velocicoaster more. I love Intamin Blitz coasters. And then the other is that Rapids ride they have at Fantasia Land. Looks amazing. Of course, Intamin Rapids ride.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, it looks amazing. And then when you first started answering the question, more seriously, understandably, because of the parks that have supported Logan, I knew you were going to mention, as I alluded to, interjected in there, Kentucky Kingdom, because I know how amazing they've been with you guys supporting Coaster Kids Day, selling your merchandise, helping raise money for Coaster Kids, which is now a charity. I think that's all amazing. That's awesome, and you should be very proud of your own accomplishments and Logan's accomplishments with all the Coaster Kids. I've met at least one Coaster Kid, by the way. I've met Itai, who is big out there in Busch Gardens, Tampa. Yeah, I met him at a media event there, and super nice guy. But yeah, you guys are awesome. So I really appreciate your time today. Again, this has been a very long interview, our longest yet. So last thing I want to do here is
feel free to cut any of this out that you need to. Feel free to trim it down.
There'll be some editing. There'll be some editing. Yeah. David's I know all about editing podcasts. Like I said earlier, David, I wish you luck on this one. But seriously, Jeff, last thing, if you'd like, please share with the Coaster Challenge audience here, how people can find you, or for that matter, Coaster Kids or Thrills United, whatever you want to share on social media, your website, your YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever you'd like to share. Here's your time. Here's your chance.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I just started a YouTube channel. I do speaking and training, and all of my events got canceled because of COVID. So I was sitting around the house trying to think of how can I have a positive influence on people. And someone said, well, Jeff, you know how to make YouTube videos. You've made like 700 YouTube videos for Logan. Why don't you start a channel? So I started a channel called An Epic Life, A-N, and then An Epic Life. And feel free to check that out. I basically tell stories from my crazy life adventures with kind of motivational, inspirational little tidbits. Someone can find me online at jeffjoyner.com. It's Joiner. The charity is coasterkids.org. You can find us on there and see Logan's team of Coaster Kids ambassadors around the world, and the board of directors and all that, and a video about what the charity does. And then Logan's new channel is Thrills United. He's Coaster Kids is right around 30,000. And I was really proud of him when he said, I'm just going to give that to charity. He gave, his YouTube channel away. He gave away his t-shirt business, pretty profitable business that he just donated to charity. And he started something new, but it's thrillsunited.com, and he's got merchandise, and he's got a team of kind of regional representatives around the world that are helping him make some content. And so anybody want to check that stuff out, we'd appreciate it. And enjoyed being on there with you guys. Look forward to seeing you at a park here soon, hopefully.
Yes, and make sure to subscribe.
Great.
Subscribe to Jeff's and Coaster Kids and Thrills United's channels. And Jeff, it's really honored to have you on the show, sir. And I really embrace everything that you and Logan have done with everything you guys have done with your social media streams and making a difference in people's lives. I mean, some of his videos that I got to see when I started out inspired me on several coasters for me to get on. And I hope that together we can do some fun projects down the road. And I definitely would love to have Logan come join us on an episode, because I would love to hear his side of the story too, on what got him where he's going. And I just deeply appreciate your time, sir. Thank you so much.
Enjoyed it. Thanks, guys.
Yes. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Andrew, Jeff, and David. That was a great interview.
It was a really fun interview. A little long, but there was so much information that when you get started in something like that, you get so in depth, you kind of lose the time. So those complained about probably the longest podcast, but it was for a very good reason. I mean, there was a really good in-depth conversation on everything from fear, anxiety, depression, bullying. I mean, it was just all a lot to take in, but it's a good this was a very good educational episode. So
yes, thank you, Jeff.
Yes, and thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Andrew and Jeff. I really appreciate you guys coming on. And, well, next week we've got another exciting episode. So I'm David Cantu.
This is JD Prescott.
And we'll see you next week here on Koaster Challenge.